All right, everybody, welcome to Better Call Paul for Thursday, May 28th. Today, thanks to Trident Title, Performance Title, and Synergy Title, we have our attorney, Paul Krasker, on just to do a live question and answer session with anybody that has any settlement questions or title insurance questions or contract questions. And then we also have a little prep for what we have coming on in June. I know it's the end of the month here, and we had a holiday week and a lot going on, so thank you all for being on. We appreciate you. Paul is just joining us from West Palm, so we appreciate you being on, Paul. And I am going to start out with a couple or one or two questions here that we have, and then we will dive into anybody else's live questions. So here comes our first one from Anna Niehaus. Got an offer and my seller countered. The time of acceptance said 2 days. In the meantime, she got another offer that came in, and that offer was higher. She told Realtor One about it, and he upped the offer price via text message, not in writing. Then he sent new contract with the higher price for seller to sign. Offer 2 was higher, and Realtor One realized that all he had to do was sign my original counter offer, and he would have the deal. Does it matter that he verbally had already given me a different price, or is it all just a matter of the contracts being signed?
I lost who signed where.
Realtor Realtor One submits offer 1, it's low. Realtor 2 submits offer, and it's higher. And then Realtor 1 tries to verbally get higher and get the deal accepted, while Realtor 2 is still in there at a higher price. And the seller gave 2 days of acceptance. It said they'll let them know in 2 days. So do they have to stick with that time period and be covered, or can they just go with number 2? Even though verbally seller offer 1 was going to be higher and come up.
Ryan, let's clarify, because it looks like Anna said he sent new contract with the higher price. Anna, right. I don't know if you want to let Anna jump in and clarify, but
yeah, Anna, let me unmute you so you can jump on here. Go ahead.
You want me to clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, go ahead, Anna. Absolutely.
So Realtor One sent a new contract with a higher price that was still lower than Realtor 2. And I was considering accepting Realtor 2. And suddenly Realtor One realized that the original counter offer that we had sent him was still in effect because it said 2 days. So he did that and sent back to me and said, I'm looking forward to working with you and closing this deal. And I thought, oh my God, had I accepted Realtor 2's, which was the highest offer, I would have had suddenly 2 signed contracts.
Right.
The reason why I didn't even think that our original counter offer was still in effect was because he had verbally given me a counter offer that was lower than ours.
Yeah. So Anna, anytime somebody gives you a counter offer, you have 2 options. You can counter that counter offer. You can reject that counter offer. But if you don't do anything, then if you don't do anything, you can let it die, but you'd have to let it die, after the 2 days. If you're trying to stop that first offer from being effective, you'd have to actually rescind the counter offer that you sent. And you can't rescind it after it's signed by the buyer for the first realtor.
Yeah, which of course, those buyers hadn't signed it yet. They weren't going to sign it. They were going to do a new counter offer, and suddenly they realized that what we had countered originally was what they suddenly wanted, because that got them into the deal. Sure. I know it's really confusing if you don't have the actual contract in front of you, but I was sweating it because I suddenly realized I got to tell my seller that they have to go with the original counter offer.
Correct. That counter offer your counter offer that the buyer signed and sent back to you created an effective contract.
Yeah. Now, my other question on this is, I usually always put a date in there where it says, um, acceptance deadline, where he just put in 2 days. So where does that 2 days start and end?
The 2 days is from the receipt of the counteroffer. But again, you can always rescind your counteroffer before it's signed. So if you turn back to somebody and say, I'll give you 2 days to think about this, and you get another offer that you like better, you can then notify them in writing, I'm hereby rescinding my counteroffer.
Yeah, okay.
So, Paul, in situations like that, do you suggest they put some kind of a timeline on it, especially if it's 2 or 3 days when a hot property
Sure.
could have multiple offers come in? Or do you suggest them just do an instant counter or an instant say no, denial, and if you want to come back, you can come back?
Yeah, I think if you're going back and forth and you're at the end of the negotiations, to put 2 days is unrealistic. You need to put by the end of the day. I need to know today or not, yes or no.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we have Anna, anything else? Are you good with that?
No, I'm good with that. Actually, we're in contract, so all good.
Awesome, perfect. All right, I have Brian Perry too jumping on right now. I'm going to try and unmute him. And he also had
I just muted myself.
There you go. Go ahead, Brian.
Hey, Paul.
Hey, Brian.
So I thought this might be a good forum to ask you a couple of questions about contracts in general.
Sure.
Well, I guess the first thing is, on the issue that we've had recently, I just would like a little bit of clarity. I think everybody might benefit from understanding at what point, are we officially like under contract? Because, obviously with some of the things that we were dealing with, I wasn't, I'm still not totally crystal clear on that.
Sure. So
you understand where I'm coming from, like with the missing initial and everything,
Yeah. The general concept is that the contract is not effective or binding until all parties have signed and delivered it to the other side. And there's some technicalities that people can argue about if there's one initial that's missing here or there. Is it a material part of the contract, or is it just something that needs to get cleaned up? I would argue that all initials are required, and that certainly if the other side was trying to get out of the contract, they would rely on the fact they never fully signed the document, so they can't, in the opposite, say that it's a binding contract even though they didn't initial every page. That said, there is some concern that some courts have said if you missed one initial on a standard page that had no changes and it was just an oversight, and the seller's now trying to get out of that because they got a higher offer, that would be unfair to the first buyer. So, you certainly need to check on those items to avoid being in a situation where you've got two signed contracts.
Right.
So, Paul, just to cover something on that with that initials, because on the compliance side of things, we've seen that a lot. Just say page 6, for whatever reason, the initial didn't go in the auto sign, but page 1 through 5 it is, and then 7 through 12 and all the addendums, everything correct. And it's just an obvious mistake where someone just skipped out. Is there something that really holds them to that, or is that still considered not an executed contract because one is missed, even if it's obviously a silly mistake or, a user error?
So that's where the gray area is that Brian and I were discussing this past week. And I think that lawyers are going to argue either way, whatever's best for their client is.
Makes sense.
I'll tell you what I learned is that if it's, when I asked Paul about an issue that I had, his first question was did it have a material impact on the contract or something of that nature? And so my lesson that I took from that is, even if you're missing like one small initial or something, be very, very careful about how you proceed at that point, because it can be interpreted in a couple of different ways. And
Because
Correct.
I could see agents almost being, I'm not saying anyone would do this, but I could see an agent being shady and strategically saying, hey, let's just not initial page 6 because if we need to get out, we're out.
Right. And the more conservative perspective is, in your scenario, Ryan, it's just an innocent mistake. Probably just was an oversight in signing, and that should get corrected in the inspection period so that nobody has the ability to argue that they're out. But
sorry, Paul. Go ahead.
yeah, but if it were an initial on a page that was talking about seller's disclosure, or it was initial on a page that had a change that was eliminating the seller's right to sue in equity for under the contract, then I would call that a material term. There's no contract until it's initialed, and be very firm in that.
So, Paul, here's a thought that I had to try to mitigate the situation I was just in, and that is, what if I added in the additional terms some very specific verbiage to the effect of, we won't consider this an effective contract until every single rider, disclosure, addendum attached has been completely signed and initialed in all appropriate places by everybody in finality. If anything's missing, this is not an effective contract, like some kind of wording like that, so it's just crystal clear, so it could never be interpreted another way. Is that
you can
necessary
certainly
here?
add something there. I actually like what you did better, which was turn to the other agent and get them to acknowledge in writing that it's not a fully executed contract and that they need to get you back that initial page.
Well, and another thing what I learned is that when I went back to them and I said we're missing an initial, what I think what I need to say from now on is, this is not an effective contract. You're missing an initial. Like, make that statement, because that statement's actually not made in the back and forth as much.
Okay.
And anyway, just trying to mitigate that kind of.
Yeah, no, Brian, that's a good point, because how if you say, oh, don't worry about it, we'll get to it when we get to it, then it makes the agent think that it's okay. But if you're being very clear and saying, yes, we would take this offer, however, you're missing line whatever 153 or initial on page 7 or whatever, then that way it's clear that, okay, we're willing to take this, however, we don't actually have an executed contract yet.
Yeah, it was very revealing to me. And it wasn't just Paul, it was multiple people that I talked to, other attorney and other, experts. And it was amazing to me how I was always under the impression that if everything's not signed and initialed, it's not effective. And then, I don't know, that was turned on its head a little bit in my mind. So,
Yeah, that is interesting. Gab has a good point to add on to this, Brian, before you go on. What if all the signatures on the main contract are done, however, riders or addendums, such as like an HOA addendum? So the seller receives the contract, they sign the full contract, the as is, and then they don't sign the HOA addendum or the condo disclosure or the coastal rider or something like HOPA.
Yeah, so if it's a required rider, HOA rider, condo rider, FHA rider, things of that nature, and they're not executed, then I don't think the contract's enforceable. But again, you don't want to get into a situation where you've got 2 contracts, so you slow down before you sign the second one. You turn back to the first seller and say, either, I'm rescinding our offer. There isn't a fully executed contract at this point, and I hereby rescind the offer. And you wait, 6 hours to see how badly they flip out or not, before you go down the road with a second person.
Good point. Yeah, that makes sense. Brian, did you have another one that you wanted to?
No, that's it. I mainly wanted to run by the idea of that verbiage, and Paul's point's good. I mean, the reality of it is, I think there's the issue of, the textbook definition of, what's under contract, what's not, but then there's the irrationality of the emotions that exist amongst the realtors and the buyers and the sellers.
Yeah.
And you have to take that into consideration, because you think you're in the right, yet their irrationality sometimes can override that and put you in a precarious position. you know.
Yeah,
So
and you know, the other great thing that happened during this process is the other realtor for the first contract sent just a silly email, more baiting Brian than anything else. And you have to learn in that situation to read it correctly. And many agents would have just lashed out and said, don't you dare argue these things, and take you down a rabbit hole. And Brian knew to just, it was her way of giving up more than anything else.
I feel like it was a pretty good sign that that issue is now vetted, right? Would
Right.
you agree with that, Paul?
Yeah, no, clearly they had an attorney write an email to everybody threatening, and it was clear that the realtor was asking the attorney to do this, and it wasn't a purchaser who was hiring that attorney and willing to pay a retainer fee to file litigation. And when we called their bluff, that's what it turned out to be.
Are you thinking that was happening because the realtor's trying to keep the deal together based on just wanting to earn commission?
Well, I'll tell you if anybody wants to see hear the real estate side of the lesson, the real lesson is, you know, and I've had this happen many times. I'm the listing agent, and I get an offer, and they drag their feet. They took forever negotiating. It's days between counteroffers and contracts. And what happened is you wait too long.
Yeah,
Guess what happens? Another offer comes in.
sure.
And if they locked it up 2 days ahead of time, we wouldn't even be talking about this right now.
Yeah,
It would be
you have it under
wouldn't
contract.
be a factor.
Yeah,
So I'm telling you, the real issue was they were dragging their feet. So
makes sense. Yeah, and they're playing the game too, right? Maybe looking at another one or negotiating something.
I don't know. I don't want to negatively speak about too many things on the matter, but nevertheless, I don't even think it was that. I think, to be frank with you, it was a degree of negligence, or that might be a strong word, but I don't think there was any nefarious intent. I think it was just they were just dragging their feet. They just weren't moving quick enough. I mean, our negotiating period lasted 8 days. From the time I received the offer until the time that it was contentious was 8 days. That's a tremendous period of time.
Sure.
That's 8 days of other buyers looking at the property and having the opportunity to submit offers.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yep.
And you know, and listen, it is what it is sometimes. I don't know, you know.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. All right,
Thank you. Thanks, Paul. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
I think this is a follow-up from Sylvie on this one. Is it up to the seller's agent to send all the riders once their seller signed the as is? So Sylvie, are you asking, is it the seller's agent's responsibility to have all those riders, or to know which ones are mandatory? Or because they would have to come in as a package in the contract. I'll unmute you so you can ask, Sylvie. Hang on. Go ahead, Sylvie. You should be able to unmute, and then you could ask.
Me. Okay.
There you go. Now we can hear you. Go ahead.
You mean to say you don't like to hear this nice accent?
I love it.
I hate it. Okay, so a good agent would have all the riders in the document section of the listing, right? So when you present an as-is offer, are you supposed to pull those rider and have your client fill them and send everything right up front? Or are you supposed to wait that the as-is contract is signed by the seller?
So if the listing agent has put the HOA or the condo rider into the MLS with all the right figures, then yes, you want to, as the buyer's agent, you want to pull that off. You want to sign where you're required to sign, and you want to submit a binding contract to begin with, subject to the seller confirming those numbers are still accurate and sending it back to you. You don't want to give the seller the opportunity to then attach the rider on the way back and have another round of signatures that need to be done, where another contract could come in and the seller does what everybody's been talking about doing. They got a better offer, so they say, sorry, we want a binding contract and I'm not sending you the condo rider.
So you mean to say, let's say these documents were not in the listing, which is often the case, right?
Mhm.
So I will send them an as-is signed, of course, by my buyer. The seller will sign it too and return it to me. But I don't have all the riders at this point. So if he gets another offer with all the riders, I'm considered not in contract?
Correct.
You're kidding me. So
So
which
Sylvie, that's also though where you have to kind of take the advantage, the point of advantage there, because a lot of the realtors don't do that, as you said. So you have to know if it's in a condo, make sure you send a condo rider, if it's a HOPA.
So, but since I'm not representing the seller in this case, I don't necessarily know the actual figure that appears on the rider. So you're saying have my buyer sign a blank?
Well, most people in that circumstance call up the listing agent and say, I'm filling out the condo rider. Please give me the information to fill in. I noticed it wasn't on your MLS form. What is the parking space number? What is the, do you have the condominium documents required to be sent, paragraph 5? And if so, why don't you email me the link right now so that I can check the box on the condo rider that says we've received it, as opposed to the other one that says it's voidable in 3 days after we receive it, and have that conversation with the listing agent up front.
So which rider is necessary? Which other document beside the as is necessary to make it a binding contract?
Well, if it's an HOA, you need an HOA rider. If it's a condo, you need a condo rider. If it's a condominium within a master plan community, you probably need both. If it's a
The HOPA one comes up, or FHA, VA also.
FHA, VA must be attached, or the lender will kick it back, not the buyer and seller. If it's I'm missing the word.
So you don't need like the lead paint rider necessarily.
Lead paint is required if it's
78.
prior to 78?
78, yeah.
But you need it to be a valid contract, even the
Yes.
lead paint. Yeah, all the riders are necessary.
There are lots of sleazy buyers who don't put a lead-based paint rider on there on purpose to go all the way through the deal and then say, oh, you know what? I forgot this was 76, built in 76. It's not binding. I'm walking away 2 days before closing.
Okay, now the seller's disclosure. Keller Williams insists on us having a seller's disclosure completed. But so many agents tells me it's not mandated by the state. I don't have one. This is really a pain in the neck.
Seller's disclosure is not required by law.
Yeah. So why
if you're representing a buyer and you want the seller to provide a seller's disclosure, you have to add into paragraph 20, seller shall deliver a seller's disclosure within 48 hours of the effective date. And then it becomes a contractual obligation to the seller if they don't cross it off. But
So
there's no obligation for a seller to do it. I tell my sellers to do it because the way you fill it out is an advantage to a seller.
Yeah, you could just put "don't know" in all those
Yeah,
spots.
I don't know. And now all of a sudden you haven't misrepresented anything, and they've got a full seller's disclosure, and they can never come back at you for anything.
So you're saying you suggest to your seller, just say, I don't know.
If the seller doesn't know, they don't have to guess. They're not asked to guess.
Yeah.
There are certain things that they do know. Is it on well water? You know if you have well water and you have septic, and you have to check those boxes.
Yeah.
Am I within an HOA? Yeah, you'll know if you're within a homeowners association. So there are a bunch of things that you're going to be able to check, but all the ones that could give rise to liability in the future, I don't know.
Yeah.
Do I have termites? I don't know. Have I been treated for termites in the last 12 months? That you could say yes or no.
So you're saying you add the requirement of providing providing a disclosure on paragraph 20 of the as-is?
Sure.
Okay.
That's the additional term section.
Okay, okay.
All right. Anybody else? Any other questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
1, 2, 3.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have one.
I couldn't see who that was, but go ahead and say it.
I have a buyer that is under contract with a property. We put a contingency of the sale of their home. Their home didn't close. Do I just send them a regular cancellation, or do I have to proceed with that differently?
Well, you may have to prove that their home didn't close. So you may have to show them a copy of the cancellation of that contract. But yeah, I would prepare a release and cancellation, say, you know, the contingency for the sale of their existing home passed without being completed, and we're canceling the contract. Please sign, and best of luck to you. And if the property is still available when our house does sell, we'll certainly come back.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Great. Thanks, Christina. Now I see that was you. Anybody else? Any questions?
Ryan, should we run through the lineup for next month?
Yeah, absolutely, guys. So if you don't have any questions, I just want to read out what we have going on for June. So for June, we're going to keep up the Thursday at 4 time slot. On June 4th, which is the first Thursday of the month, we're going to dive into the HOA disclosures and into condo riders. So if you have questions on those, I know some questions even came up from today about those. So if you do have any questions on those, make sure you're on here, and Paul's going to go through them just like we have with the contracts in the past. The next week, the 11th, we're going to do another live question and answer session. The week after that, the 18th, we're going to do wills and trusts. That's something Paul specializes in, also leaves an opportunity for probate in there. And then at the end of the month, we'll do another live question and answer. So feel free to send in questions at any time. You can text them or email them to me or Gab or Dave or Melissa or Tracy, and we will get them answered live on the air. And also stay tuned for those topics. So if you're a realtor that's regularly dealing with homeowners association or condo associations as you're listing or buying, make sure you check out that one. And if you have anything coming up with wills or trusts or probate, jump on that so that we can dive into that. Paul, anything to add before we let you go?
You know, it just that that we want to hear from you guys. If you have another topic that you want to hear about, if I don't know it very well, I will. I'll find a guest speaker to come on one Thursday to speak on it. I know in the past I've heard about ESAs, the service animals, and
That's a good one.
how people are applying or not applying and what the rules are, etc. And I could probably have somebody come and talk on that if it's something of interest to everybody. But other things that you guys care about are what we want to do. We want to try to help you close more deals so we can get more title work as well. So,
absolutely. One more question here just came in. Sylvie, how much does it cost to change a regular deed to a ladybird deed?
So if it's going to be changed between husband and wife, it doesn't matter whether there's a mortgage or not. It's just the cost of recording, so under $50. If it's going to give rights other than to the husband and wife, and there's a mortgage on the property, then you have to pay documentary stamp tax in the outstanding mortgage balance. If the property's free and clear and there's no mortgage on the property, then again, it's just the recording fee.
Awesome. Thank you. Guys, thank you again all for being here. Thank you all. A lot of you on this call have sent us deals this week alone, so we really appreciate that. Please keep pumping the deals in through Trident Title, Performance Title, and Synergy, and we will see you soon. If you have not yet registered for Monday, by the way, Build a Brand Workshop on Monday. You all are getting the email, and the invite on Facebook already went out today. So see everybody Monday. Have a great weekend. And Paul, thank you as always.